what we're talking about today, Thomas.
So welcome to this video, and we're going to be talking about limiting and limiters.
Excellent.
So Christopher, first of all, what is a limiter used for?
A limiter is to limit the peak level of the signal without a change in loudness.
So what would you say the difference between a limiter and a compressor is?
So a limiter falls under the family of compression. It's a type of compression. So last time we talked about compressors and how they work and threshold and ratio and stuff. So remembering that the threshold is the level at which compression starts happening. So after the threshold, things start getting turned down to balance out the dynamics. A limiter doesn't let anything above the threshold. It's just capped, So let's say that you had a sound on a track and its peak value was at minus, or maybe it was clipping actually. It was clipping the channel. Mm-hmm. And it was clipping the channel 3 dB over zero. So in Logic, you have that red light.
Yeah, the red.
Yeah, it have the red light, and it'll tell you what the number is. That's how many decibels over clipping it is, over digital full scale. If you put a limiter on it, and the limiter is set to 0, then that level will be capped at 0 now, and the red light will go away, but the sound will be the same loudness. It won't sound quieter. It'll just sound the same, roughly the same. That's what a limiter is designed to do. It's designed to just cap the peak level to prevent clipping without a change in gain or a change in loudness.
Mm-hmm. I do think a lot of people are told for some reason you should always produce with a limiter on the master bus.
Okay, yeah.
Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it's better just to leave space overall?
In general, I don't think it's a good idea. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me to reduce the space in which you are working in. It's like working in a confined environment versus an open environment. That it's the same thing. I think there is some advice out there that says mix with a limiter on, but I think a lot of that comes from a kind of misguided place, to be honest with you.
People trying to master their track at the same time.
Yeah, and I just think you shouldn't focus on I don't think it's going to have a bearing on how good the master is. I think if anything, you're just going to compromise what will be mastered by the mastering engineer by doing that, because if you're constantly working because you're basically limiting the dynamic range in which you're working in from the get-go before you even know what the right dynamics are for the material. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very limited way to to work. I think it's a very limited belief to do that. So it doesn't make sense to me. But what I do advise is that people just give themselves loads of headroom, because when you're mixing, you shouldn't concern yourself with what the end loudness is going to be, what the end LUFS is going to be, because I think that's futile. I think you don't have control over loudness. I don't have control over how loud you're going to listen to my music. You might turn it up, you might turn it down. You might be tired, you might turn it down. You might be whatever. You turn it up because it's a party. You've got people around, so you turn it up because people are talking. So I don't think you should think about that. And just because you've got a limiter on it doesn't mean it's going to be loud at all anyway, because limiters don't actually, that's the thing, limiters don't actually make anything louder. They don't. All they do is stop the peak.
Stop it clip. Well, it depends where you set the level.
Yeah, they stop it clipping. They generally stop it clipping. That is the very reason limiters exist, is so that we can put them on the channel and know that channel's not going to clip. But another way to stop something from clipping is just give yourself loads of headroom. Just turn down the gain so that it's really, really low. And yeah, so I mean, my advice in that is don't mix into a limiter unless you really, really know what you're doing, because over time, as you work like that, you will lose perception on staging and dynamics and stuff like that. You never gave the music the chance to breathe in the first place, so why will it breathe later?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
How much headroom do you think you should give? So a lot of people say minus 6 dB. So if you send your mix to the master engineer, minus 6 dB. Is that a golden rule, or
No.
what do you
Nothing.
think? Just
The peak value that you should have in your mix before you send it to the mastering engineer is below 0. That's it. Like as a mastering engineer, I couldn't care less what the peak value is. It doesn't have a bearing on anything, because what's above that peak value and 0 is nothing. I'll close that gap anyway, however big that gap is. I'll have a gain utility at the beginning of my mastering chain, and I'll just close the gap. If you give me 6 dB, I'll just close that gap and I'll just turn it up 6 dB or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't recommend you religiously go for a certain peak value. There's no significance to the number -6 at all. It's not a golden number. Doesn't have any bearing. What matters is what's below that peak value. The stuff, like the dynamics, the instruments, the level of the relative levels between them, the staging, how dynamic the staging is, how the stuff over there sounds and how the stuff over here sounds, and all of that stuff, the actual quality of the music. The peak value is arbitrary. It doesn't really mean anything. So you might as well just give yourself loads of headroom. And the easiest way to do that is practice gain staging. So gain staging is just, making sure that all of the levels on your tracks are a very healthy, low nominal level. And there's plenty of resources that we can share about gain staging, no matter what software you use. But give yourself loads of headroom and don't worry about the peak value. Don't even worry about how loud it is. Just focus on the music. Focus on how balanced the bottom end, the bass is against the kick and the vocals and all of the actual musical stuff. So yeah, but recommendations on peak level? No, just below 0 is fine.
Cool, awesome. So thank you for explaining what a limiter is. So in this video, we've gone over what a limiter is, the difference between a limiter and a compressor. Should you mix with a limiter on the master bus, and also, how much headroom you should leave when, finishing your track or exporting your mix ready to be sent to the master engineer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you for watching this video. Hope you found it useful. If you like it, remember to give it a thumbs up. If you hate it, remember to give it a thumbs down. And we'll talk to you soon.
And leave us some feedback.